India has close to 15% already. And last year, out of the 1650 odd CPLs, 18% were women pilots. So as far as the MRO and FTO sector is concerned, that is also growing extremely rapidly. Aerospace manufacturing is another sector that is taking very strong roots in India. Domestic entrepreneurs have grown their aerospace manufacturing units over the last 15 years by leaps and bounds. International majors have finally seen the silver lining with regard to setting up operations in India. Almost all international majors today have their foot firmly implanted on the ground in India. From Raytheon to Collins Aerospace to Boeing to Airbus to Safran, across the board. And the C295 facility in Vadodara, which all of you are aware of, will produce 40 C29 aircraft domestically in India. So aerospace manufacturing is another area which is understandably growing tremendously. There is not a single aircraft that is produced by Airbus or Boeing internationally today that does not carry a part that is made in India. So the concept of Prime Minister of Atmanirbhar Bharat, made in India, vocal for local, local for global, has become very much a paradigm of the civil aviation space. From the fuselages for the Apache helicopter to the appendages of the C-130J Hercules aircraft, to the tail fins of the Boeing, to the escape chutes in aircraft which are manufactured by Collins Aerospace, to wire harnesses, to seats, to ailerons, across the spectrum, Indian companies and joint ventures are working assiduously at huge amounts of growth in this sector in India. Finally, the area of drones and eVTOLs is also assuming rapid proportions. Government has firmly come forward and assisted this sector in terms of its growth trajectory. The Prime Minister's prerogative is to ensure that India becomes the global drone hub of the world. And to that end, whether it is putting in place a facilitative policy, whether it is putting in place a PLI for a sector that is just beginning, and whether it is creating the demand for that sector by 15 line ministries doing their tasks using drones. All three legs of that supportive tripod today are in place. Cabinet has also passed a scheme wherein 10,000 self-help groups, and specifically women, will be trained free of cost to become drone pilots. They will be given drones at an 80% subsidy. Insurance for those drones will be provided completely on a subsidized basis. And this scheme envisages 10,000 women becoming drone pilots over the next few years. Training is on for the first batch of women to become drone pilots as we speak. Today has been an important day in terms of the advancement of civil aviation in the country. And I'd like to go over 5 major events that have happened today. The first is the landmark order, the first order of its kind to be signed in India for the procurement of triple-digit aircraft. ACASA's order of 150 Boeing aircraft is the first order to be signed on Indian soil. And this is in addition to the already 22 that are in their fleet, and the balance 54 that are awaiting delivery. So their first order were for 76 aircraft, and now this is the second order, which will start coming in from 2030 to 2035 for 150 aircraft. This follows the two big orders, which are landmarks as far as international orders are concerned. The order of Airbus and Boeing with Air India and Indigo for 500 aircraft and 470 aircraft. So that is a huge event from Wings India 2024 today. Along with this, Airbus has made a number of announcements. Top-up orders with Indian customers, talks are underway. Airbus manufacturing contracts have been finalized with the Tata Group, TASL and Mahindra for sourcing of components and services from India. We've also seen the Airbus A350 aircraft, the first Air India aircraft that was unveiled today, brought in by Airbus with the new Air India livery, beautiful Air India livery across the belly and across the tail. This aircraft will have a higher efficiency with 25% lower fuel burn, world-class ambiance, and a 9,700 nautical mile flying range, which is ultra long haul, for between 300 to 410 passengers. It has the capability to fly with 50% sustainable aviation fuel and up to 100% by 2030. So it's an environmentally sensitive aircraft as well. Along with this, Airbus has also signed a JV with Tata to set up a training center for pilots with 10 full flight simulators in India. And along with that, we also have Boeing, who set up partnership with MRO partners, mainly with AIESL, which is being finalized for training of our engineers on 737 MAX aircraft. Boeing has also placed manufacturing orders with TASL and Rangsons for different equipments. And along with that, the 777X aircraft was also shown in this air show, which is the world's largest and most efficient twin-engine jet. 10% lower fuel use in this aircraft. Along with this, we've also launched Udan 5.3 for new routes, and GMR Aviation School has also been launched at a cost of 50 crores, where our engineers will be trained on both DGCA norms as well as EASA norms, making them internationally equipped human resources to be able to service this industry. So it has been a very eventful day. We've also had a ministry plenary followed by a global CEOs forum, and now we will also be doing many more events as the day passes on and over the next 24 hours as Wings India from the 18th to 21st Jan goes ahead with its role. So it's a landmark event for not only India but for all of Asia, and I welcome you all to this landmark event being held at Begumpet Airport in Hyderabad. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We can take some questions. Before asking any question, mention your organization name and your name. Thank you. Yes, please.
I'm Richa here from Business Line, and good to have you over in Hyderabad. It's long due interaction. I want to take you to a very not too happy incident which happened the other day. and action were taken against certain airlines. What we want to understand from you is how do we avoid such incidents in future that you don't see, such uncalled for situations, which is not good for our image also.
Your voice is resounding a little bit. Can you step away from the mic a little bit? Yeah.
Now is it okay?
Yeah, better.
So I just want to take you back to the incident which happened the other day, where your watchdog had to get into action and airlines were penalized. So on your behalf, how do you propose to ensure that such incidents don't happen in future?
Are you talking about the Indigo incident that happened at? Okay. So, as you saw, so first of all, let me take a step back and say that our ecosystem is working very assiduously at serving the needs of people across the length and breadth of India. It's a sector that has grown phenomenally well. It's a sector that is going to assume even greater importance and greater demand. It is a sector that has to continuously evolve as the number of passengers grow, and also service to them must be of the highest quality level. Having said that, there are the vagaries of nature over which unfortunately we as human beings don't have complete control. And those vagaries of nature happen all across the globe. Now, we've had a couple of very bad fog days in Delhi, and as you all are all aware that in any civil aviation ecosystem there are base stations, and when due to weather or due to any incident the base station gets affected, then that produces a virtuous cycle of unfortunate delays and cancellations across the length and breadth of the system. So we've had a few days of zero visibility. In those days of zero visibility, even with Cat 3 runways, it becomes difficult, if not impossible, for landings and takeoffs, because I'd like you to understand that landing and takeoffs are not determined by runway capacity alone. They are determined by three independent variables, and those three independent variables are the capability of runways to land and take off aircraft, the capability of aircraft to land under certain RVR, runway visibility range, and then the capability of the human resource to be able to land and take off within a certain range. And it's the highest common factor between those three that determines that capability. So that caused a chain of events which led to this aircraft coming into the airport, and then as opposed to it going into a parking stand for reasons that I cannot even imagine, it was sent off into a parking bay. I have repeatedly said that safety and security of our citizens is primary for us under civil aviation. And therefore, within hours of being informed or getting to know of that incident happening, beyond the stroke of midnight, a meeting was held with all officials within the ministry. The show cause notice was immediately issued. The fact that passengers were inconvenienced, the fact that they had to eat on the tarmac, the fact that security had been compromised, across all points, it was unacceptable. And within 3 to 4 hours, notices were issued, and within 24 hours of the notices being issued, the necessary penalties have been levied. Very clearly, Richa, this or any incident like this is unacceptable for us. And therefore, the penalties have been issued, and in the car, the civil aviation requirements, we've issued 2 separate cards. One for the additional steps that need to be taken with regard to fog environment by airlines separately, by airports separately. And secondly, if in the event an aircraft is diverted, such as what happened in this instant, what are the SOPs that need to be in place that every airline and every airport operator needs to follow to the T? I.e., it should be taken to a contact stand. Not only crew, because a crew change occurs because FTTL limits have been crossed, but also passengers should be deboarded. All facilities should be available to them. They should be looked after. Meals should be arranged, and when the new crew comes on, then they should be moved from arrivals to departure again, go through security and board again. But in the interim, a environment where they can comfortably wait should be created. This certainly is what happened was unacceptable, and it was a shameful incident, and I don't mind saying that very, very clearly.
Sir, I'm Jyotiraditya from the Hindu.
One minute.
Can we?
Yeah, please ask.
Good afternoon, sir. Jyotiraditya Chandra from the Hindu. I have 2 questions. My first question is on the issue of FDTL, and your recent decision of revising the FDTL has been widely welcomed, including by pilots. But the question is that airlines are not very happy with it, even though this is in the interest of safety and fatigue. Have the airlines indicated how do they plan to implement this, and what are the kind of pilot hiring requirements that will have to take place, given that even the DGCA will have to, process licensing, etc. And then I'll ask my second question. Thank you.
In Parliament, we only get an opportunity to ask one question. Okay, thank you, Gargi. That was a very important question. As Civil Aviation Minister, I am not a minister for airlines. I am not a minister for airports. I am a minister for every stakeholder in my ecosystem. And that means when airlines have a pain point, it's my responsibility to resolve it. When airports have a pain point, it's my responsibility to resolve it. When passengers have a pain point, it's my responsibility to resolve it. When crew has a pain point, it's my responsibility to resolve it. And therefore, the ecosystem has to work like the multiple wheels of the back of your clock, where every wheel has to work at a pace which will not endanger safety or security of any other part of the wheel. And therefore, this issue with regard to flight crew, when it was flagged to me and DGC had been looking at it, I said the first thing we need to do is look at all our international peers, whether it's EASA, FAA, and based on that knowledge base, it's not a cut and paste job. It cannot be a cut and paste job, because you operate under a certain condition, I operate under a different condition, he operates under a different condition, and therefore we have to build a model for the Indian condition. It never was an issue until now, because you didn't have the demand. Suddenly demand has gone from 4,20,000 passengers a day pre-COVID to 4.5 lakh passengers in April, May of last year, which is low season, to 4,76,000 passengers in November and December of this year. Airline fleets are expanding, but demand is expanding as rapidly. So therefore, it's my fiduciary responsibility to make sure that I take care of every stakeholder in my system. And therefore, whether we like it or not, I cannot risk crew or anyone else enduring fatigue. And therefore, the FTDL norms and other norms that we put in place are keeping in mind a little buffer as well to make sure that there is no chance of any risk with regard to fatigue setting in as far as our crew and our pilots are concerned. Now, understanding that very clearly, 2 years ago, I could make out the rapidity with which demand is going to escalate in our sector. And therefore, we concentrated on setting up many more FTOs. Therefore, the first thing that we did was change and scrap the FTO policy and bring in a new FTO policy. As a result of which, you've seen a burgeoning of the FTO sector. Close to about 10 to 11 FTOs have been set up in the last 12 to 14 months. Which is why you've seen from 1160 the growth of CPLs grow to 1650. Almost a 40% growth. The first helicopter FTO in Asia, not India, in Asia, has been set up at Khajuraho in Madhya Pradesh. And therefore, we've got to continually increase that pipeline of CPLs coming out. We've got to continually increase the pipeline of our airline fleet growing, which is why I'm glad to report to you today. DGCA last year had co-opted 88 aircraft, new aircraft into its fleet. By last year, I mean now, last to last year, 22. Last year in 23, they've co-opted 133 aircraft. So you've had almost about 45 delta, almost a 50% increase or a greater than 50% increase in number of aircraft that have been co-opted. So we are running full steam ahead, making sure that the bandwidth at the back end also grows. Now, if you have so many airports, if you have so many aircraft coming in, if you have so many more pilots, don't forget, you've got to have enough ATCOs as well. Chairman AI is sitting over here. We had close to about 2,700 ATCOs. In the last 20 months, we have grown that to 3,794 ATCOs. Almost a 33% increase in number of ATCOs. By middle of this year, we'll have another 496 coming on board. At the back end, we have increased the capability of security, Bureau of Civil Aviation Security, by almost another additional 400 personnel. Our Airport Regulatory Authority, we beefed that up by another 10 officers within ERA. So from 22, they've gone to 32. And on this factor, I must thank our Finance Minister who's come forward very readily to support our sector. Similar is the case with our CISF personnel at our airports, because as airports grow, volume grows. We had 221 million throughput capacity in our 6 metros a year and a half, 2 years ago. Today we have 261. We're going to go to 428 million by the year 2030. Now that requires many more staff for security. In the last 8 months alone, we've added close to about 3,000 to 4,000 people in terms of CISF personnel. And so therefore, we are pushing at every end of the envelope. Not only what we see in public domain, which is the things that fly over our heads and the buildings that we go through, but everything that has to come together to be able to man those buildings, to make sure everything is safe and secure as we go down this path of tremendous growth under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi. Sorry, long answer to your short question, but...
So my second question is on the other important stakeholder, passengers. And recently we've seen, passengers were left stranded, they were stuck inside aircraft, tempers were running high, they were protesting on tarmac. The question is,
I've already answered that question.
So the question is different. Would you relook at passenger charter rights? Because there are questions of the charter of rights for passengers.
Charter or? Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we have, so let me step in there and tell and say this to you, that one of the things that we have done in those SOPs is that we have instructed airlines that if you are looking at your flight being delayed beyond 3 hours, you must treat that flight as cancelled. So therefore, this question that you're talking about with regard to 6-hour delays and 8-hour delays should now become a thing of the past, because it is being monitored. And let me say this as well. In terms of cancellations, delays, in terms of the war room that I have asked every airline to set up at every airport, in terms of informing passengers, if your flight is delayed, informing you through either email, SMS, WhatsApp, those SOPs are being monitored by DGCA on a twice to thrice daily basis, every day. And therefore, those rules that have been put in place, any violation of that will be very strict action will be taken, as was the case with regard to FTDL, where in fog season, 2 airlines violated that FTDL rule, and those 2 penalties have also been issued yesterday.
One question from Mint.
Hi, my name is Ashok Raj. I am from ANI. सर मेरा सवाल ये है कि आप लगातार इस पेनल्टीज या फिर अभी जिस तरीके के चार्जेस लगाए हैं एयरलाइन और एयरपोर्ट पर, उसके बाद कांग्रेस इसमें पॉलिटिक्स कर रही है. शशि थरूर ट्वीट करके ये कह रहे हैं कि आपका मंत्रालय पैसेंजर्स या फिर उनके हक के लिए नहीं लड़ रहा है.
I think we need to move on from this. There are many friends of mine and colleagues of mine that have all the time to go through research articles and try and put up misleading posts. I have answered those very fairly and squarely to the T in my response to that post yesterday, and I don't think I need to clarify beyond that.
Thank you, sir.
Cindia जी,
Please.
सुरेखा बोल रही हूँ इंडिया टीवी से.
Miss Anu, please.
Hi sir. Sir, as we've seen that the air travel, we are seeing air travel like never before. December air numbers were historic high. Then we've seen the recent incidents, how 2 days of fog-related disruption brought the air travel to a standstill. Then we saw passengers assaulting crew, as well as airlines and airports violating norms. And you've stated a list of measures that you have taken. But going forward, will you look at exploring more ways to bring more discipline into the system, which is probably, getting reduced on both sides of the spectrum, from the passenger side as well and also from the airlines and airport side?
Well, I think you have to look at this from a lens of whether this is a force majeure situation or whether this is a normal practice. Force majeure with regard to weather is not something that's limited to India. It happens across the world, from New York to Europe to across the world. And therefore, when weather systems come in, whether it's snow or whether it's fog or so on and so forth, the sector that gets the most disrupted across the world always is civil aviation. We have done, from our point of view, we have put in, as I mentioned to you, we've put in over the last few 4 or 5 days, in any event, prior to fog season, we have a fog schedule that's put in. There are many steps that are taken in consultation with the airlines with regard to that fog schedule, i.e., both aircraft and pilots must be Cat 3, Cat 2, Cat 1 compliant, and so on and so forth. As far as what happened this particular time is concerned, I've already elaborated on the number of SOPs that we put in place, and I think those are substantial and will ensure safe and secure travel for everyone within our community.
We can take one question from Hindustan Times. Yes, please.
Sir, with respect to the unfortunate incidents,
I think I'd like to move on from that. This is Wings India.
Boeing, just one last. Is the ministry in dialogues with Boeing with respect to the incidents that have happened recently internationally? Is ministry in dialogues with Boeing with respect to few incidents that have happened recently as precautionary dialogues with Boeing?
Are you talking about the Alaskan Airways?
Yes.
Okay. So that's a Boeing MAX 9 series. There have been some changes on the Boeing MAX 9, substantial changes in terms of technology compared to the Boeing MAX 8. DGCA has been in touch with both Boeing and FAA and EASA. There are many airlines in the world that have Boeing MAX 9s in their fleet. Understandably, those airlines have grounded those Boeing MAX 9s pending the regulatory assessment of those, and understandably, and should be the case. In India, we do not have any Boeing MAX 9s in any of our fleets.
We can take one question from Business Standard. Yeah, please.
Sir, Deepak Patel here from Business Standard. Sir, can you give us an idea? Sir, can you give us an idea about the strategy or the plan of the government regarding the bilateral rights? You know, a lot of countries are looking for expansion of bilateral rights right now. So, what is your thinking?
So we have a very, very clear policy, and the very clear policy is that we have over up close to about 116 ASAs that we've signed. Beyond 5,000 kilometers, we have an open sky policy. With many countries, we have bilateral seat allocations, and those are reviewed from time to time. As far as India is concerned, we are extremely eager to promote point-to-point traffic internationally. I firmly believe that as domestic traffic is growing at a CAGR of 15.3 odd %, international traffic is also growing at a very, very high CAGR of 6.5%. One of the main thoughts I had in mind was to ensure that our airlines also graduate towards wide-bodied aircraft. And I'm very glad that this Air India order envisages close to about 70 wide-bodied aircraft out of their 470. And even the Indigo order has many A321 XLRs, which increases the range to about 6.5 to 7 hours. So we'll be able to touch most corners of the globe. Similarly, we certainly are eager to have other airlines come to India, which are also point to point. But I think now that the scale within India, we are ready to also look at setting up our international hub. I think it's about time, with 150 million domestic passengers and close to about 60 million international passengers. I think it's about time we set up our international hub. So we are in conversation with the Delhi Airport and with Indigo and Air India to look at setting up the first international hub in India. There are many airports within India, initially just now only one, which have twin airports, which is Goa. Soon you will have twin airports in Mumbai, with Navi Mumbai coming up, and you will have twin airports in Delhi with Jewar coming up. That will increase our capacity as well. And I believe that India is ready for an international hub, both for airlines departing from India and international airlines coming to India. And as far as the bilaterals are concerned, as capacity increases, wherever there is a requirement, we'll certainly look at it.
Sir, I have a question here.
This side, sir. Sumit Chaturvedi from ET Now, sir. One of the issues plaguing the sector is grounding of planes. Did you have any talk with the Pratt & Whitney people? They were here also.
Very good question. Very good question, and thank you for your question. Yes, it's a issue of tremendous concern. Tremendous concern because where on the one hand demand is increasing rapidly, where on the other hand the ecosystem is supplanting itself, we need much more enhancement in our fleet capacity. Today we have a number of our aircraft AOG, aircraft on ground. 53 are because of a certain incident that happened last year with an airline unfortunately closing down. But the rest of the airplanes, and this does not cover one type of aircraft. It covers Boeing 737s, Airbuses, Q400s, ATRs, and most of them unfortunately are linked to a particular equipment supplier. And that equipment supplier is Pratt & Whitney. The fact is that they've had global supply chain disruptions, and this has to do, unlike with regard to a car which can still run beyond the time that is scheduled for service. When an aircraft engine is scheduled for service, you have to service it, because there's no way that you can fly it unless it is serviced. And therefore, a lot of those engines are down awaiting service. It certainly is an area of concern with me. We have raised this at every relevant forum. Having said that, we still are very reassured because even with aircraft on ground, our fleet today has increased by close to about 25 to 30 aircraft over the last 1 year. We now are roughly at about 646 aircraft in air in India. And every month now between Akasa, Air India, Indigo, some regional airlines, we are receiving between 5 to 8 aircraft per month. So that number in terms of aircraft in air is only going to increase. But does that mean that I am not concerned about the AOG? Absolutely not. I am extremely concerned about the AOG, and we need to get those aircraft in air as well.
Sir,
last two questions.
Here, sir. Mr. Minister, sir, from the lady, sir. Yeah.
Hello,
Mr. Minister. This is Lashpreet Kaur from the Hindu. I had 2 quick questions for you. One of them being the visibility.
You are taking the example of Gargi behind you.
So these will be really quick. So one is around the visibility challenges, which were not.
What is around the what?
Visibility challenges, which were not constrained to the North India, airports in the north of India particularly. This time, these issues were also felt by certain airports in the south of India, for example, Chennai, and also officials in Hyderabad airport sort of coming up with concerns around visibility. So are we planning to have CAT 3B? As far as my knowledge goes, 6 Indian airports so far have CAT 3B installation. Are we also looking at installing CAT 3B across Indian airports, or maybe looking at more installations going forward? Or are there any other new technologies that we're looking at for sorting the visibility challenges?
Okay, good question. What's your name again?
Lashpreet Kaur.
Good question, Lashpreet. So, in 2014, we had only one airport prior to Prime Minister Modi's government that had CAT 3B, and that is Delhi. Today, as you mentioned, we have 6 airports that have CAT 3B. Lucknow, Kolkata, Amritsar, Jaipur, and one more. Bengaluru, I think. Bengaluru. So we have a total of 6 airports that have Cat 3B capability. Having said that, we have a number of airports across the country that have Cat 1 and Cat 2. It's not necessary for every airport to have Cat 3B because it really depends upon, because Cat 3B allows takeoff at 50 meters, landing at 50 meters and takeoff at 125 meters. That level of fog is not there in every airport. So Cat 1 and Cat 2 can also do its job. And as far as Chennai is concerned, we have, out of the 2 runways, 1 runway which is already Cat 1, Cat 2 enabled. India has close to 15% already. And last year, out of the 1650 odd CPLs, 18% were women pilots. So as far as the MRO and FTO sector is concerned, that is also growing extremely rapidly. Aerospace manufacturing is another sector that is taking very strong roots in India. Domestic entrepreneurs have grown their aerospace manufacturing units over the last 15 years by leaps and bounds. International majors have finally seen the silver lining with regard to setting up operations in India. Almost all international majors today have their foot firmly implanted on the ground in India, from Raytheon to Collins Aerospace to Boeing to Airbus to Safran, across the board. And the C295 facility in Vadodara, which all of you are aware of, will produce 40 C29 aircraft domestically in India. So aerospace manufacturing is another area which is understandably growing tremendously. There is not a single aircraft that is produced by Airbus or Boeing internationally today that does not carry a part that is made in India. So the concept of Prime Minister of Atmanirbhar Bharat, made in India, vocal for local, local for global, has become very much a paradigm of the civil aviation space. From the fuselages for the Apache helicopter to the appendages of the C-130J Hercules aircraft, to the tail fins of the Boeing, to the escape chutes in aircraft which are manufactured by Collins Aerospace, to wire harnesses, to seats, to ailerons, across the spectrum, Indian companies and joint ventures are working assiduously at huge amounts of growth in this sector in India. Finally, the area of drones and eVTOLs is also assuming rapid proportions. Government has firmly come forward and assisted this sector in terms of its growth trajectory. The Prime Minister's prerogative is to ensure that India becomes the global drone hub of the world. And to that end, whether it is putting in place a facilitative policy, whether it is putting in place a PLI for a sector that is just beginning, and whether it is creating the demand for that sector by 15 line ministries doing their tasks using drones. All 3 legs of that supportive tripod today are in place. Cabinet has also passed a scheme wherein 10,000 self-help groups, and specifically women, will be trained free of cost to become drone pilots. They will be given drones at an 80% subsidy. Insurance for those drones will be provided completely on a subsidized basis. And this scheme envisages 10,000 women becoming drone pilots over the next few years. Training is on for the first batch of women to become drone pilots as we speak. Today has been an important day in terms of the advancement of civil aviation in the country, and I'd like to go over 5 major events that have happened today. The first is the landmark order, the first order of its kind to be signed in India for the procurement of triple-digit aircraft. ACASA's order of 150 Boeing aircraft is the first order to be signed on Indian soil. And this is in addition to the already 22 that are in their fleet and the balance 54 that are awaiting delivery. So their first order were for 76 aircraft, and now this is the second order, which will start coming in from 2030 to 2035 for 150 aircraft. This follows the 2 big orders, which are landmarks as far as international orders are concerned. The order of Airbus and Boeing with Air India and Indigo for 500 aircraft and 470 aircraft. So that is a huge event from Wings India 2024 today. Along with this, Airbus has made a number of announcements. Top-up orders with Indian customers, talks are underway. Airbus manufacturing contracts have been finalized with the Tata Group, TASL and Mahindra for sourcing of components and services from India. We've also seen the Airbus A350 aircraft, the first Air India aircraft that was unveiled today, brought in by Airbus with the new Air India livery, beautiful Air India livery across the belly and across the tail. This aircraft will have a higher efficiency with 25% lower fuel burn, world-class ambiance, and a 9,700 nautical mile flying range, which is ultra long haul, for between 300 to 410 passengers. It has the capability to fly with 50% sustainable aviation fuel and up to 100% by 2030.